thought the year was scary so far, you haven't seen anything yet.
We are continuing Horror Month. All month long, what we are doing here for this October is the entire month of October, all 31 days, we are bringing you nothing but franchises this year. Now we are actually going into a franchise that I've only ever seen the first movie of this entire franchise, and I'm kind of excited about it. And I'm going to tell you, Vince, that I think this year I'm really excited about all this stuff because unlike the previous years, you know, I've seen 99% of the movies we've already talked about in the other horror months. And this year we've been picking franchises I've never seen before.
Well, actually a lot of these movies I've seen, but I haven't seen the entire franchises. Like I might have seen one or two of them, but I've never seen like part 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 14. Never saw any of those. So, but this time around, we've picked a movie that I've been looking forward to this, and it's something that I enjoyed back in the 80s a lot. I liked this movie quite a bit. I wanted to go to the movies and to go see it, and never got a chance to. But when it finally, of course, came to VHS, I was able to watch it and absolutely love this film. And it is the movie House.
And we got the box set from Arrow because, first off, this box set has all 4 houses. There's 4 movies of House, which I didn't even know. I thought there was like 2, but apparently there's 4. And the thing with this 2 is... Hang on, I gotta burp. Okay. The thing with this 2 is it's from the UK. There is no American version of this. This is straight from the UK, but the difference between this and the American one, or some of the other UK ones, is it works here in America. So it's all region. So if you go out and you get this off of Amazon or wherever you get it, do not worry about it not playing because it's all region.
Okay, well that's this set. But as far as 2 of these films that are in this set, or in this movie series, the Arrow had actually brought out House and House 2 in America as well as the UK. So there's an American version of House and House 2. There's nothing different on them. It's just one's actually for America and one set is actually for UK. But this particular box set is all UK, and it is an all region, as David said.
Now, because also it's Arrow, and Arrow is a lot like Scream Factory, they came out with an amazing looking box set, and each movie is in its own individual case with its own really cool looking artwork, which is also reversible. I've always loved the original poster. I mean, I like the new one, but just the cut off hand hitting that doorbell, it's sort of like Creepshow for me. It's just such an iconic image. I love that picture.
Yeah, it is. And especially with that tagline, "Ding dong, you're dead." I always like that. It's
ding dong.
As good a tagline as, like you said, Creepshow. You mentioned Creepshow. It's as good a tagline as Creepshow had with the most fun you'll ever have being scared.
So this came out in 1985, and in 1985, I was a complete addict of Fangoria magazine, because back then, that was sort of, if you're a horror fan, that was where you went to get your information. There was no internet. I mean, there was nothing. It was Fangoria, and Fangoria wrote this thing up a lot. I mean, they really promoted this thing. But the bad thing, too, about Fangoria is they showed all the monsters. So you're opening up the pages and you're seeing, the guy here on the front cover, and you're seeing all the monsters. So when you go see the movie, you've already seen all the monsters because you've seen them in the Fangoria magazine. That's the only problem with that was.
Yeah, that and if you actually read the articles, you'd learn about a lot of the makeup effects. Of course, Fangoria that was the whole thing with Fangoria. It was not only was it to show the movies or showcased horror films, but it would showcase behind the scenes and talk about all the special effects and the makeup effects, and a lot of that got ruined for you too if you read the articles.
And what this really had going for it and got me so excited was it was produced by Sean S. Cunningham and directed by Steve Miner, you know, of all the Friday the 13th fame. I mean, I was like, this is it? This is the new Friday the 13th? Oh my God, I can't wait.
And you mentioned those two people from Friday the 13th, of course, Sean Cunningham being the one who helped create Friday the 13th. There's also a few other people from Friday the 13th, not only in this movie, but who helped with this movie. Like Harry Manfredini, who did the soundtrack. He's the same one who did the soundtrack for just about all the Friday the 13th.
Okay, so House stars William Catt, and if you don't know who William Catt is, he's, of course, the greatest American hero.
Yeah. I love that television show. That was one of my favorite television shows of all time. And when this was coming out, just to know that he was in it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's Ralph Hinckley. I have to see this.
And the thing is, he's a great actor. He was a fantastic actor in that, and he's a fantastic actor in this. And I don't really know why he didn't blow up and make more movies. I didn't understand that, but he's a really good actor.
He was also in Carrie.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that.
He played the boyfriend that gets the blood poured on top of him.
This also has George Windett in here. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Who's Norm from Cheers. Where'd you go?
Oh, okay. I thought she had more to say.
Oh. And I actually do have more to say. And Richard Mole. How do you say his last name?
Richard Mole.
He is Bull from Night Court. And these were all these shows that I used to watch growing up. So we got Greatest American Hero, we got Cheers, and we got Night Court. So I'm like, oh man, this is great. So the movie itself is about this weird house, and it's unlike, I guess, any other movie that I've really seen.
It's a haunted house film. I want to point out one thing. I was talking about there's other people involved with Friday the 13th that are in this. And you're mentioning the actors. Well, in one scene, they show a detective. And the detective is the cop at the very end of Friday the 13th.
There was no boy.
Yeah. We didn't find any boy.
Yeah. There was no boy. We didn't find no boy.
Plus, they show the police, the actual police cops, officers, show up at the house. And one of them is Stephen Williams, who played the bounty hunter in Jason Goes to Hell.
And I believe Kane Hodder was in this movie as a stuntman.
Yes, he was.
Yes.
Kane Hodder, who became famous for playing Jason not once, not twice, but 4 times in the Friday the 13th films.
It's a really hard movie to explain because it seems like it wants to be a comedy, but at the same time it wants to be scary, but at the same time it wants to be sort of a Vietnam, documentary, and at the same time it wants to, have monsters in it, and at the same time it wants to be like a Twilight Zone episode. So I don't know if it really knew what it wanted to be.
It's an Arrow release, and Arrow is a lot like Scream Factory. They actually do have some extras to this, and I think they do actually get into explaining what and where this was coming from.
Because when Becky was watching this, she's like, I don't know what she was expecting. She's like, this is not what I was expecting from this movie whatsoever. And I think a lot of people who if you've never seen it and you sit down and watch it, you're like, it is a weird movie. I mean, that's the best way to describe this film. It's weird. It
is strange, but the thing of it is, it's just all of those elements. It actually all works in this film. It all comes together and actually really works. It's a solid story.
I think the best part in this entire film is Norm. I think he is absolutely hilarious in this movie. Oh my God, he is the best, I think, thing in this entire film.
Yeah, it just has some really great dark humor to it as well. I think it actually could have used just a bit more. I mean, there was some elements where you find it really funny, and maybe it wasn't necessarily supposed to be funny at that part. But then Norm is there actually being the comic relief in the film.
It's like when he first meets him for the first time, and he's going off onto William Cat about how crazy the woman is. He's like, yeah, she was a real nutbag. I mean, she was crazy. She was a real Looney Tune. And then William Cat's like, she was my aunt. He's like, oh, well, great woman. Perfect woman. Stuff like that. I mean, it's just funny. And he does it so well in the movie. It's just great. So my issues with this film is this. First of all, I think it has great imagination. I think it's funny, and Norm is just really, I think he just makes this movie so much better. But my issues is this. Now, I like practical effects. I've always loved practical effects. You know, if I could pick practical effects over CG, I'd always pick practical effects because they're realistic and they look real. However, this movie has all practical effects because there's no CG, but the costumes in this film I thought were terrible. I thought they looked like people in October in a haunted house, or trying jumping out and scaring you. They just look like costumes. They didn't look like monsters. They look like people in costumes.
It's like you're watching a Halloween costume.
Yeah, they're not realistic. They're just like the blue woman or whatever color she was, blue or green or whatever. It looked like a person in a rubber costume.
Yeah, and I think some of that too is, you got to remember, when this film came out, there wasn't the high definition that everything is now. There wasn't the Blu-rays. There wasn't the 4K and all that too. You got to kind of remember that. So watching this on VHS or watching this at the movies, I mean, yeah, it might still look like a rubber suit that somebody's wearing, but it probably looked a little more real that way than it does now. Now you're watching it, and it's all cleared and cleaned up, and this does look really good on Blu-ray. It does look really clean and really clear. When these were made, it was actually on film, and it was not digitalized and not CG and not this and not that. If you can remember that, it actually, okay, you can kind of deal with it. You know, it doesn't look so fake. It doesn't look like a Halloween costume. But now, since everything's cleared up, it looks like a person in a Halloween costume.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think probably when it came out, it was all foggy and grainy, and you're like, man, that looks awesome. And now you're like, no.
I mean, that's actually, what you're seeing is actually the way it was, but it's not the way it was. It's not the way it was actually presented originally.
I don't know. It just seemed like most of the effects in this movie weren't that great, and I don't really know why, because they had the technology to make cool-looking suits. They had, technology to make cool-looking monsters. Not that, they had a lot of monsters in the 1980s, but there's a scene where William Cat's walking up to this closet, and there's a monster on the other side of this door, and Norm is in the room and everything, and so he walks up to the closet, and you can see the wall moving before he walks up to it. The entire wall moving in and out. I'm just like, And then he opens the door up, and this thing jumps out, and it's not scary because the wall's going whoa, whoa, whoa before he even walks up to it, and I'm just like, the wall's moving.
I have to say, though, when I first watched this, it did actually freak me out. I mean, there were parts in here that did scare me. I mean, that there were jump scares in it that didn't, at the time watching this, I was also young, I was really young watching this for the first time, but, it did freak me out. I was like, whoa, I didn't expect that, or whoa, and I can't say it traumatized me or anything, that years later, oh man, I can't watch that scene, it just gets to me. It's nothing like that, but, I mean, first, not ever seen anything like this before, it actually was kind of scary when I first saw it. Now, not so much.
Yeah, I think so. Same with me. As I watch it, and there was a lot of scenes in it that freaked me out because you're a kid and you're not paying attention to the wall going, whoa, 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 you know. But yeah, there was a lot of, and the thing I really liked about it because it was weird, and there was no movie out like this because you have this house and all this weird stuff's happening, and you have a door that opens up that goes into those weird places, and you have stuff that you're not expecting to happen, and all that, and it still sort of holds up with the story in this, but the comedy in it is great. I mean, it is really funny. There's a lot of really hilarious, funny scenes in this movie. Great scenes.
And I have to say, the part that Richard Moll plays in here was great, and that's what this movie really got kind of famous for. Was he had some really good lines in here, of course. It was like, "You're pissing me off, Roger."
Now that it's nice and clear and you can see this, I had a huge problem with him because he has the skeletal teeth on the outside, but when he opens his mouth up, you can clearly see his mouth inside of the mask, and you can see his lips and his actual teeth, and he blacked out his mouth, so where you're not supposed to see it, but you can clearly see his mouth inside the other mouth. He opens up the mouth, and you see his mouth talking inside of it. It's like he's wearing a rubber mask, but when he opens his mouth, you can clearly see him talking.
And that's exactly to my point. I mean, when you saw this for the first time, you never really noticed that. You couldn't see it. It was actually dark. And so that you didn't actually see that. It was grainy and it was dark, and you didn't notice his mouth behind the mask going, blah, 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 "You're pissing me off, Roger." You didn't see that.
I mean, they could have at least put like a piece of cloth over it to hide his mouth, but no. I mean, his mouth is really exposed there when he's talking.
But I have to say, the actual costume he's wearing looks good. I mean, it does. It does look like even though it's a suit and it's rubber and it's latex and all this, and you can look at it and clearly see that it's a Halloween costume basically, but it actually looks really good. I've always liked the way he looked.
Yeah, and when I was a kid, and again, they would show him on Fangoria magazine. He might have been on the cover of it. Yeah, I seen him all inside the Fangoria, and I was thinking, man, he's really awesome looking guy. And yeah, it still looks good, but it just, sometimes when technology gets better, the effects get worse, I guess.
Okay, so I'm going to do the extras for House. But before I get into it, I just want to let you guys know that what you're watching is actually one of the franchises that David and I was recording for Horror Month this year. So we did all 4 of these movies, and I'm going to edit all 4 of these reviews that we did and bring them to you so you can see what we were working on. This is one of them. This was one of the franchises that we were working on for this year. So the first extra we have on House is an audio commentary with the screenwriter Ethan Wiley, as well as the director Steve Miner, the producer Sean S. Cunningham, both from Friday the 13th, and the actor William Catt. So this audio commentary is it's alright. It's informative. It's everything that you kind of want from an audio commentary. And I say kind of because, I mean, it is informative. It lets you know what they did and how they made the movie and all of that, and what took everything they did to try to make the movie. And then you have William Catt, talking about certain scenes. You have Steve Miner talking about certain scenes and how they did them and how they put them together. Everything you ever would want to know about House. I think the only issue I kind of had with it is that there are times when it literally sounds like you're sitting in a bar listening to 4 guys talk about their experiences in making movies. It's not terrible. It's not bad. It's not horrible or anything like that. But it literally sounds like they're just sitting around talking about House. You know, sitting around talking about the movie. Sitting around, you know, like they're all, you know, let's have a few drinks and do this and do that. Yeah, that's what it feels like. You know, let's just, you know, they kind of talk over each other a little bit, and some of their voices are kind of similar, so it's at times it's kind of hard to know exactly who's talking and when. But overall, it wasn't a bad commentary. It wasn't terrible or anything. It's worth listening to. It's just, like I said, it's just sounds like a bunch of guys sitting around at a table or at a bar somewhere and talking about their experiences. So the next extra on here, of course, is a making of extra featurette that's done by Arrow Video as well as Red Shirt Pictures. And Red Shirt Pictures we all know from Scream Factory. So the production of this is actually really good. Every time these Red Shirt Pictures guys get together and make one of these for either Scream Factory or Arrow or whoever they're doing them for, they're always fantastic. They're always actually done really, really well, and this is no different from that. It's also fairly long. It's about as long as the movie. So you're going to sit there for a while watching this, but it's worth it. It actually is worth it. So this making of is really good. It's got a lot of the actors. You got William Catt, you've got George Wendt, you have Kay Lins. They all come in, as well as Sean S. Cunningham and Steve Miner and Ethan Wiley and Fred Decker and all the screenwriters and the crew and everybody that was worked on the movie comes into this, and it's entertaining. It's fun to watch. It's not, I wouldn't say it's the greatest of making ofs, but it is. If you know nothing about House, if you know nothing about the movie at all, it is really good making of, because it's informative and it lets you know how they made the movie and what it took to get the movie done. And there were some things I didn't know, and you know, things that I hadn't read in Fangoria magazine that came to light in here, and it was really interesting and to hear what actually took place. So it's worth it. It's a good making of. It's worth sitting there watching it. And the only downfall to it is possibly that if you do listen to the audio commentary, some of the things that you hear in the audio commentary, they repeat in this. Of course, because it's a making of. And with the audio commentary, they're kind of sort of doing a making of. So it kind of repeats itself, but not a whole lot. There's still more detail in this than there is in the audio commentary. Next up is a vintage making of. Now, this one looks like it was something that was shown on television. And I don't know exactly what the name of the show would have been, but it is the making of House. So that's what it is. And it pretty much goes over the same stuff that's in the other one, but everybody's younger, everybody's, you know, because it was filmed when they were making the movie. So with this one, there is a lot more behind the scenes stuff, and you do see a lot more of them actually filming the movie and actually making the effects and things like that. So it's a little bit different, but it's based around the same thing, a making of. And it's not bad. It isn't bad. I think the other one is a lot more informative, but this one isn't bad at all. And it's kind of fun to look back and see this kind of nostalgic place and time to watch this. I mean that's one thing that this movie does have. And out of both of these making ofs, I think what was really interesting is the fact that the guy that was writing it, he always wanted to do like a Twilight Zone episode. That's what he was kind of intending for this, for House, and what became House and the whole franchise. It was kind of supposed to be this Twilight Zone kind of thing. And once you realize that, then some of the weirdness, even though it does tend to get really weird, some of the weirdness makes sense. Which is kind of weird in and of itself. So after this, of course, they have the teaser trailer, the actual coming attraction trailer, the TV spots, as well as a still gallery. Pretty much basic stuff that they have on every Blu-ray. And with the still gallery, of course, you get promos and behind-the-scenes pictures and things like that. All those images that they took photos of. And with the other stuff, of course, it's trailers. So, and some of them you might remember, some of them you might not. So it is interesting to go back and watch those things to, if you know, jog your memory a little bit about this movie. And you sit there and go, oh wow, I actually remember that on television. So now, back to the review.
So, for Horror Month 2020, what are you going to give The First House?
I actually really did enjoy this movie, though. I mean, I love the innovativeness to it. I love the story to it. There's not really any flaws to it, too much. I mean, there's flaws in the movie, maybe, makeup and effects and things like that otherwise. But as far as the story and everything goes, it actually is a pretty good, solid story and a decent story. For the most part, most of the acting is really good in this movie, especially from William Katt and George Wendt. And I would give this movie a definite 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. But there was things, and it's not, I guess, the movie's fault, but still, you know, it just, the effects were kind of lazy in the movie. They just weren't, I don't know, like the wall moving, and there was just, I don't know, they could have done better effects, and you could see Richard Mall's mouth moving and stuff. But the story was great, Norm was fantastic, and William Katt was great in the film, and the acting was really good. The story was really imaginative, really, really great story. So I am going to give House 1 a 4 out of 5.
Well, like I said, I enjoyed this movie. I found it fun. It's actually a fun movie, and I think sometimes it's really hard to balance the comedy with the horror. But this one actually does pull it off. And at the time when this came out, a lot of horror films was doing that. They were doing comedy and horror, like Evil Dead 2. They had to mix this dark humor with the horror, and some of them do it well and some of them don't. But this one actually did it well.
Yeah, it's a real fun movie, really enjoyable, and the thing about this film is you can actually let your kids watch it because it's not really violent, it's not really scary, it's just a fun horror film, and it's a great movie to watch in October.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun movie, and I enjoyed it. So next up we have, of course, the sequel to this called House 2: The Second Story.
Let me tell you, I've never seen it. I've never seen anything past this first one. I could have sworn I watched the second one, but I had never seen it. I just sat there and watched it. I was like, I've never seen this movie.
Well, I did see the movie, and way back when. And, well, we'll get to that. But you'll have to join us. You'll have to come back to see House 2: The Second Story. And to do that, we need you to subscribe.
Yeah, so pull yourself up out of the grave, dust yourself off, and come back tomorrow.
We'll be here.
Alright, turn the camera on. Oh,